You're standing at the mirror, aren't you? You lift the front of your hair, you turn toward the light, and you see it. That part down the middle looks wider than it did last year. The scalp shows through where it never used to. And for one quiet second, you feel older than you are. I know that feeling because I stood exactly where you are standing now. Here is what I need you to hear before anything else. Thin hair is not what ages you. The way you have been styling thin hair is what ages you, and the difference between the two costs you nothing but a few habits you can change this week. I learned this the hard way, in my own bathroom, after years of doing everything the so-called experts told me to do. By the end of this, I am going to hand you a technique I found buried in a 1950s salon manual, the kind of thing Hollywood set stylists used on leading women whose hair was thinning under hot studio lights. It takes about 90 seconds. It uses only the hair already on your head. No new products, no salon appointment, no scissors. Stay with me, because the first mistake I have to tell you about is the one I made the longest. For years, I believed that keeping my hair long made me look younger. That is what I had always heard. Long hair is youthful, long hair is feminine, and cutting it off means giving up. So I held on. I let it grow past my shoulders, well down my back at one point, and I told myself I was hanging on to something. But thin hair and long length are enemies. I did not know that then. Here is what actually happens. When hair is fine and the strands are sparse, gravity becomes your opponent. Every extra inch of length pulls the hair flat against your scalp. The weight drags the roots down, so any lift you had at the crown collapses by mid-morning. And the longer it gets, the more the ends thin out into wispy little tails that let the light pass right through them. I remember catching myself in a shop window on a gray afternoon, walking beside a much younger woman, and the contrast stopped me cold. Her hair had body. Mine hung like a curtain that had lost its fullness at the hem, and I thought, when did that happen? I had been blaming my age. It was the length. The fix was almost insulting in its simplicity, and it made me wish I had done it a decade sooner. I cut to just above the collarbone. Not short, not a severe crop, nothing that made me feel like I had surrendered. Right around the collarbone, or an inch above it. At that length, thin hair holds its shape. The weight is light enough that the roots can lift and stay lifted. The ends sit fuller because there is simply less hair being stretched over a longer distance. But length alone was not the whole story. The way the ends were cut mattered just as much, and this is where I had been getting terrible advice. For years, my hairdresser layered everything. Layers, layers, more layers, feathered and thinned and razored until the ends looked like the fringe on an old lampshade. She told me layers add movement. What nobody told me is that on thin hair, heavy layering removes the one thing you cannot afford to lose. It removes weight from the perimeter, which is the exact place thin hair needs a solid, blunt edge to look dense. Think of it this way. When the bottom of your hair is cut in one clean, blunt line, your eye reads a full, solid wall of hair. There is a defined edge, and a defined edge reads as thickness. When the bottom is chopped into wispy layers, your eye sees straight through the gaps to the scalp and the neck behind it, and thin looks thinner. So I asked for a blunt cut. Just above the collarbone, a strong, clean line at the bottom with only the softest face framing near the front and nothing more. The first time I saw it dry, I actually laughed out loud because it looked like I had twice the hair. I had not grown a single strand. I had simply stopped cutting away the illusion of fullness. Now, if the cut can do that much, imagine what the color was quietly doing against me all those years. Because here is where it gets stranger, and where I lost real money before I understood. I had been dyeing my hair dark, a deep, rich brown, almost black at times, because I thought dark hair looked polished and covered the gray completely. What I did not understand is that dark hair on a mature scalp is the cruelest thing you can do to thinning. There is a simple reason, and once a dermatologist friend explained it to me, I could not unsee it. As we age, our scalp does not stay the same shade. It grows paler, and it often takes on a pinkish or shiny quality where the skin is more visible. Now picture very dark strands sitting on top of that pale scalp. Every place the hair is sparse, you get a stark contrast, dark against light. The scalp practically glows through the dark hair, and the contrast screams thin. The studies on this are consistent. The more contrast between your hair color and your scalp color, the more visible any thinning becomes. Reduce the contrast, and thinning becomes far harder for the eye to detect. It is not opinion, it is the way our eyes read edges and contrast. So I did something that terrified me at first. I went lighter. Not blonde, not a shock, nothing dramatic. I went 2 shades lighter than my natural brown into a soft, warm caramel brown with fine highlights woven near the part and around the face. The instant I did, the part lines softened. The scalp still showed a little, of course, but it no longer glowed through because the lighter hair sat far closer to the shade of my own skin. The contrast collapsed, and with it, half the appearance of thinning simply vanished. I want you to hear the number that stunned me. When I stopped fighting my gray with the darkest dye on the shelf and instead blended lighter tones near my part, people started guessing my age 5 to 7 years younger than they had the season before. Same face, same wrinkles, lighter hair near a pale scalp, and suddenly I read as younger and fuller all at once. And there is a second gift hiding inside, going lighter, one nobody mentions. When your color is dark, your regrowth and your gray show up at the root within days, so you feel chained to the dye. When your color is lighter and blended, the gray grows in as a soft highlight instead of a hard line. I went from touching up every 3 weeks to stretching it past 6. That saved me real money at the salon, easily a few $100s a year, and it saved my hair from the constant chemical stress that makes fine strands even more fragile. If you want to go deeper into everything I have just described, the cut, the color logic, and the full system I built around making thin hair look full and alive again, I put it all into a book called Style Reset. It is the complete, organized version of this knowledge, written for women who are done experimenting and want a clear path forward. There is also refined and complete style, depending on how far you want to take it. All of it is linked in the description below, and I think you will recognize yourself on the very first page. But I want to come back to the products because there's one more category that was quietly working against me every single morning. I need to stop here and say the thing out loud because by now you may be feeling what I felt, a slow, rising anger, because who told us to do all of this wrong? Who sold the older woman the idea that she should dye her hair the darkest shade to look put together? Who convinced us that thinning hair needed to be chopped into safe, short, layered little styles that ask for no attention? Who profited every single time we walked into a shop confused and walked out with another product that did nothing? I will tell you what I came to believe. Somewhere along the way, women our age were quietly handed a script. Keep it low maintenance. Keep it sensible. Keep it out of the way. Do not draw the eye. And a whole industry was very comfortable with that script because a woman who believes she is supposed to fade is a woman who stops asking questions and keeps buying whatever is put in front of her. The volumizing shampoo that strips your hair and gives you nothing. The thickening spray that turns to glue. The heavy conditioning oils marketed to older women that do the one thing thin hair cannot survive. They weigh it down flat. That last one cost me 2 years of frustration, so let me save you from it. I had been slathering my hair in rich, heavy conditioners and those popular hair oils because the bottle said nourishing and mature hair needs nourishing, does it not? Well, yes and no. Fine hair does need moisture, but it cannot carry weight. Every heavy cream and every drop of oil I put through the lengths coated my fine strands, made them cling together, and dragged them flat against my head within an hour of styling. The change was almost comical. I stopped putting conditioner anywhere near my roots and the top of my head. I applied a light conditioner only to the bottom third of my hair, the ends, where dryness actually lives. The roots, I left alone completely, and I threw out the heavy oil, replacing it with a tiny amount, a drop the size of a grain of rice, smoothed only over the very ends to stop them looking dry. Within a week, my hair stood away from my scalp again. It breathed. The lift at the crown that I thought I had lost to age came back, and it had never been about age at all. It had been about weight I was pouring onto my own head every single morning. Now, here is where I know exactly what you are thinking, because I thought it too. You are thinking, this is fine for her. She probably has money for salons and fancy products and time to fuss in the mirror. And I want to stop and talk to you directly, the woman who is sure none of this applies to her. It applies to you most of all. Everything I am about to give you now works with the hair on your head today, with whatever you already own, without spending a single dollar. I promised you that at the start, and I meant it. So let me prove it, because the most powerful changes I made were the free ones. Start with how you dry your hair, because this alone can double the appearance of volume and it costs nothing. For most of my life, I washed my hair, wrapped it in a towel, and let it dry however it fell, or I blew it dry with the hair pulled straight down and away from my face. That downward direction is a quiet disaster for thin hair. You are literally training every strand to lie flat against your scalp in the direction of gravity so it collapses. Instead, flip your head upside down. Bend forward at the waist and dry the roots while your head hangs down, aiming the warm air at the roots, not the ends. Rough it around with your fingers while it dries. What you are doing is drying the hair away from the scalp instead of against it. When you flip back up, the roots want to stand rather than lie flat, and you have volume you did not have 30 seconds ago. It is free. It takes 3 extra minutes. And it works on any hair, any budget. Next, and this one I want you to test tonight, look at where you have been parting your hair. Most of us have parted our hair in the exact same place for 30, 40, even 50 years. Same side, same line, day after day, decade after decade. And here is what that does. The hair along that part learns to fall in one fixed direction. The roots there lie completely flat, trained by years of gravity and habit, and worse, that overused part line grows wider and more visible over time because the hair has given up trying to stand there. That single flat, exhausted part line is often the very thing that is showing your scalp and announcing thin hair to the world. You do not need to buy anything to fix it. You need only to move it. But I am going to save the full method for the very end, because there is a specific way to do it that I found in an old source, and it does far more than just shift the line. Before I get there, let me give you 2 more free changes I made with things already in my bathroom. The first is texture over shine. For years, I chased shiny hair because shiny felt healthy and expensive. But shine is the enemy of fullness on thin hair. A smooth, shiny surface reflects light in a way that shows every gap and lets the scalp gleam through. A matte, slightly roughened texture does the opposite. It scatters the light, the strands separate and stand apart from one another, and separated strands read as more strands. If you have a bit of dry shampoo in your cupboard, and most of us do, you already own the cheapest volumizer there is. Work a little into your roots, even on clean, dry hair. It adds grip and grit, the roots lift, and the whole top of your head looks fuller instantly. The second free change is your pillowcase and how you sleep, which sounds absurd until you understand it. Fine hair breaks easily, and every strand you lose to breakage is one you cannot spare. I stopped going to bed with wet hair, because wet hair is at its weakest and it snaps against a rough cotton pillow all night. And I stopped tying it back tight, because the constant tension at the hairline thins the most visible hair of all, right at the front and the temples, where thinning shows the most. These cost nothing. They are simply things I stopped doing wrong. So now you have the cut, the color logic, the products to abandon, the drying direction, the texture trick, and the small habits. And every one of those made a visible difference. But I told you at the very beginning that I found something buried. something specific, and I have made you wait long enough. Let me take you back to what I discovered, because the story of how I found it matters. I have always loved the way women looked in the golden age of Hollywood, the 1940s and 1950s. Not the glamour exactly, but the sheer fullness and lift of their hair, even the older actresses, even the ones I later learned had naturally fine or thinning hair. I always assumed it was wigs, or an army of stylists, or something out of reach for an ordinary woman at her own mirror. Then I got my hands on an old grooming and hairdressing manual from that era, the kind of practical guide that studio and salon stylists actually used, not the glossy magazines. And tucked in its pages was the reason those women had such lift, and it had almost nothing to do with wigs. Here is the secret, and I want you to try it this very week. Those stylists understood that hair must be set and dried in the direction opposite to the way it naturally wants to fall. They did not fight thin hair with volume from a can. They retrained it, section by section, to stand up and away from the scalp. And the single most powerful place they did this was the part and the crown, the exact two places where our thinning shows most. This is how I do it now, and it takes about 90 seconds on damp hair. First, find your old, tired part, the one you have worn for decades. Now make a new part on the opposite side of your head. If you have always parted on the left, part on the right, and the reverse. The moment you do, something wonderful happens. All that hair that spent years trained to lie flat in one direction is suddenly being asked to fall the other way. Against its habit, it resists. And in resisting, it lifts at the root and puffs up along the new part because it does not know how to lie flat in this new direction yet. Instant volume at the crown, from hair that was flat a moment ago. But the reverse part is only half of it. Here is the piece from that old manual that changed everything for me. Before the hair dries, at the crown, the top back of your head where thinning is worst, take small sections and dry them by pushing them forward and up against the direction they normally grow, then let them fall back into place. The old stylist called it setting against the grain. You are lifting the root off the scalp and drying it in the lifted position so it holds. When you gently smooth the top layer back over, you have a hidden cushion of lifted hair underneath, and the whole crown sits high and full, exactly the way it did on those screen legends I had envied for years. If you want to make it last all day, and this is the final touch, once that crown is dry and lifted, tip your fingers under the top layer and mist just a whisper of dry shampoo or texture at those lifted roots. The grit locks the lift in place. That is the entire secret. A reverse part, roots dried against the grain at the crown, and a breath of texture to hold it. No wig, no salon, no money, no new hair. The first morning I did all three together. I stood back from the mirror, and I did not recognize the flat, fading woman I had made peace with. My hair stood away from my scalp. The part that had been widening for years was now soft and full and shifted to fresh, untired hair. And the light no longer passed straight through to my scalp because there was lifted hair standing in its way. I want you to understand what actually happened there because it is bigger than hair. For years I had believed that the flatness, the thinness, the fading was simply age arriving, and there was nothing to be done but accept it and keep it tidy and out of the way. That was the lie. The knowledge of how to make fine hair look full and alive existed all along. Women knew it. Stylists practiced it. It was written down in plain language in manuals from 70 and 80 years ago. And then, somewhere in the rush of new products and new marketing and new rules about what older women should quietly settle for, it was pushed aside and half forgotten. It was not lost because it stopped working. It was lost because a flat, fading, low-maintenance woman was easier to sell to. I found it again by accident, in the pages of a book most people would have thrown away, and now you have it too. So, let me leave you with what I most want you to carry out of here, and it is not really about hair at all. The thinning was never the thing that made me look older. Believing there was nothing to be done was the thing that made me look older. The moment I stopped accepting the flat, sensible, invisible version of myself and started retraining my own hair to stand up again, I stopped looking like a woman who had given up. And people looked twice, the way they had not in years, and this time it was for the right reason. That is who I am now, and I suspect it is who you are too. A woman who is finished fading on someone else's schedule. A woman who has decided that elegance does not expire at 60 or 70 or ever. The mirror is not your enemy. The old rules were. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean this specifically. When you try the reverse part this week, the one where you switch your part to the opposite side of your head, come back and tell me what you saw when you looked up. Did your crown lift the way mine did? Type it in the comments below, in plain words, because I read them and because another woman who is nervous to try it needs to hear that it worked for someone real. Do not just think it. Write it down and leave it for me. And if you are ready to stop disappearing, join us. This is a place for women who are reclaiming the visibility that was quietly taken from us, one small, powerful change at a time. Subscribe and stand with the rest of us who refuse to fade into beige. Because next time, I am going to show you the one color you have been told to avoid your whole life after 60, the shade every magazine warned would age you, and why wearing it right beside your face actually takes years off and makes people ask what you have been doing differently. I found the truth about that one in a place you would never expect, and I cannot wait to hand it to you. Now, before you click away, I want to circle back because I left something unfinished and it has been nagging at me, and I think it has been nagging at you too. I told you to cut to the collarbone. I told you to go lighter. I told you to reverse your part and lift your crown. But there is a question sitting underneath all of it. The question I asked myself in the hardest year, and it is this. What if you look in the mirror and you still see thin hair even after everything? Because that fear kept me from trying for far too long. I thought, what is the point? It is just going to look thin no matter what I do. So let me answer the woman who is quietly certain that her hair is too far gone. You are not styling to erase the thinning. You will drive yourself mad chasing that, and it is not the goal. You are styling to change what the eye notices first. That is the whole game. The human eye does not add up individual strands of hair. It reads shape, edge, contrast, and light. Give it a strong shape, a clean edge, low contrast at the scalp, and lifted texture that scatters the light, and it simply stops noticing the sparseness. It sees a full, deliberate, elegant head of hair, because that is what you have shown it to see. I proved this to myself in the plainest way possible. I did not have more hair the morning everything changed than I had the morning before, not one strand more. The only thing that changed was where the hair sat, what direction it fell, how light it was near my scalp, and how the light hit it. That is it. And it was enough to take years off, to make strangers hold my gaze, to make me feel like myself again after so long feeling like a faded copy of myself. Let me give you a few more of the small things I got wrong, because I want you to walk away with more than you came for. I used to brush my hair when it was soaking wet, hard, from the roots down, tearing through the tangles. Fine, wet hair is fragile, and I was ripping out strands I could not afford to lose and stretching the rest until it snapped. Now I detangle only with a wide-tooth comb, gently, starting from the ends and working up, and only when the hair is damp, not sopping wet. The amount of hair I stopped losing in the sink was frightening, in the best way, once I saw how much I had been causing myself. I used to use a hairbrush with tight, dense bristles that flattened everything and created static that made the fine strands cling to my scalp. I switched to a brush with widely spaced bristles that lifts rather than presses. Small thing, real difference. And I used to wash my hair every single day, stripping it and restyling it constantly, which on fine hair is exhausting and counterproductive because freshly washed fine hair is often at its flattest and most slippery. I learned that my hair actually looks fuller on the second day when it has a little natural texture and grip. So I wash less, I refresh the roots with a touch of dry texture between washes, and my hair holds its shape far longer. That change alone gave me back time and gave my hair back body. Notice something about every single one of these. Not one of them required me to grow more hair. Not one required money I did not have, or a body I no longer have, or a stylist standing over me. They required me to stop doing the things that were quietly working against me and to start doing the small, deliberate things that women knew how to do generations ago, before we were all told to simplify ourselves into invisibility. That is the thread running through all of it, and I want to name it clearly one last time. Almost everything that was making my hair look old was something I was doing to it, not something age was doing to me. The dark dye, the heavy oil, the long, dragging length, the wispy layers, the flat, exhausted part, the downward drying. Every one of those was a habit, and every habit could be changed for free this week, starting tonight. So here is what I want you to do the moment this ends. Go to your mirror, find your old part, the tired one you have worn forever, and move it to the other side of your head. Just that. Watch what your crown does when the hair is forced to fall against its decades of habit. That single free change is the door. And once you feel your own hair lift for the first time in years, you will believe the rest of it, because you will have felt it with your own hands. I spent too long believing the flat, fading woman in the mirror was simply who I was now. She was not. She was a woman following rules that were never designed to make her look beautiful, only to make her easy to overlook. The day I stopped following them was the day people started looking twice again. You are not too old. Your hair is not too far gone. You were simply handed the wrong instructions by people who benefited from your believing you had no better options. Now you have the right ones, pulled from a 1950s manual that outlived everyone who tried to make us forget it, and handed to you plainly from one woman who fought her way out of the beige to another who is about to. Tell me in the comments what your crown did when you switched your part. Subscribe and stand with the women who are done disappearing. And come back for the color secret, because that one is going to surprise you even more than this did. You are going to look twice in the mirror this week. And for the first time in a long time, you are going to like what looks back. I stood right where you are, so let me keep going. Inside the Ageless Elegance circle, this video continues styled step by step for your hair. And you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be doing this alone. Women just like you are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel anytime. One click. If this helped you today, do stay with me. Subscribe and look around the channel, because I have more simple tips just like this to help your hair look fuller and feel easier every day.